Thanks for joining us for episode 3 of The Digital Source, where we'll be talking all things personalisation. I'm Sarah, Head of Digital Delivery at Visualsoft, and today we're joined by Jack, Senior Partner Manager at Klaviyo, and Giles, VP of Partnerships from Reviews.io. Welcome both. So Jack, we'll start with you. Could you tell us more about your role at Klaviyo and what Klaviyo does?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me here today. Really excited to be here. So my name is Jack. I work as a partner manager at Klaviyo. So essentially I work with agencies and their respective clients to make sure that everyone is getting the best out of our tool, essentially. Now, in terms of what Klaviyo does, we are a marketing automation platform and we exist to power smarter digital relationships. So making sure that brands are connecting and engaging with their customers in a really meaningful way and essentially trying to create a really meaningful experience with the end customer.
Thank you, Jack. And Giles, obviously reviews are more important than ever in terms of breaking through that noise. Can you tell us more about what you do at Reviews.io?
Yes, sure. So I'm the VP of Partnerships for EMEA at Reviews, and Reviews, it's really about kind of giving those customers a voice. So everyone's as consumers, they want to really kind of talk about what the products are doing for them, the type of products they're buying, and just give that kind of insight to those brands so those brands can learn from that and it can help their decisioning.
So Jack, talk to us about some of the clients that you guys work with. What does your demographic look like?
So we've got a relatively wide range of customers. Historically, though, they have been e-commerce platforms and e-commerce brands and retailers, I should say. And those brands have historically existed on Shopify. About 70% of Shopify merchants use Klaviyo today. But really, if you are online, you can use Klaviyo. So in terms of the size of these brands, we work from the smallest brands who are just getting started out all the way to these large enterprise brands too. So one, for example, is Glossier, who we should all be familiar with. But a really wide array of industries and ecosystems, so catered to a lot of different types of brands.
Very good. And Giles, how about you guys?
It's actually very similar to kind of brands that Klaviyo work with, and we share a lot of clients, and we're platform agnostic, so we work across all the different kind of platforms as well. So, and there's brands like kind of Box Raw, Jimmy's Iced Teas, New Forest is another brand, and it's just kind of like working kind of closely and even more closely with them to help them really kind of understand what the kind of customer's saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Why do we think personalisation has become such a hot topic today?
I think one of the biggest things that has happened is the marketplace has become far more competitive. So year on year, e-commerce typically grows about 14%, and COVID came along and accounted for about 7 years of growth all at once. And subsequently, there's a lot more brands out there vying for the attention of their customers, essentially. And that means that there's this huge amount of noise. And for a lot of brands, the way that they have attempted to stand out is through their product and their pricing. And this can be really challenging. So when we think about personalization, really what we're doing is we're creating these unique moments which really engage with customers. And we're trying to make sure that this is really a point of differentiation for brands. So I think because of that, personalization is really important. And also simultaneous to that, one of the things that is changing as well is the technology which is accessible and available to small and medium businesses. If you wanted to be personalized in marketing 10 years ago, it's something that you could probably only do if you were a blue chip company. Now, nowadays with Shopify and these different platforms which are democratizing essentially the different technology and offering and tools like Reviews and Klaviyo that plug into that, we have the ability to leverage this technology far more than we previously ever could. And because of that, I think a lot of brands are leaning into this too.
Yeah, you talked there about noise. How do we break through that noise?
Well, I think one of the kind of key things, and to kind of pick up on kind of Jack's point there, is like it's just making it useful for the consumer. If it's useful to you as a consumer, it's perfect, and it makes your life easier, and you can kind of run through and you get the information that you need, and you can kind of buy the products that are based on your kind of previous habits. And I think sometimes, and that's the kind of danger point for brands as well, because sometimes they're not thinking about it in that way. They're overcomplicating things, and it is about kind of simplifying things and just making it as useful for the consumer as possible, the customer. So is the customer seeing what they are interested in? And that's kind of key. And it's also about, from a kind of reviews point of view, it's kind of showing that kind of engaging and authentic content that's relevant to people. So people can see kind of marketing content and they're used to it, but sometimes they're a little bit kind of blinded by it because it doesn't feel real or something that someone would actually say about that product. But if you've got real people talking about that product, it's much more kind of powerful, and it's something that they can kind of relate to. And that's one of the kind of key things and the way to use personalization.
Yeah, I love that point, actually. I think the other thing that we've noticed is kind of how the customer demographic is changing as well. The people that we're now marketing to are really the first generation who are digitally native, we would say. And they understand transactional commerce. They understand that a newsletter where you get or signing up for a newsletter where you get 10% off, they know what that means. Perhaps it doesn't resonate with them in the same way it used to. So really creating these experiences which are unique and compelling to one particular person, I think is what sets you apart.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's this generation, I think, who are coming to expect it now.
Yeah.
Rather than it just being there. Like, they expect to have it.
Yeah. No, I think that's true, and that's only going to continue as people become even more kind of used to it. So it's and I think this kind of comes into kind of integrations as well for kind of brands when they're looking at this, just making sure that you help this sequence and you help this personalization by making sure that you've got your kind of integration set up, and so that can do a lot of the kind of legwork and around it.
What are some of the best examples of brands who are doing this really well at the minute?
Okay. I'm going to be a little bit cheeky before we get into brands and just bring it up a level and just look at the different technology providers that are doing well, because I think we can try and emulate some of the strategies they have. So let's take a classic example, TikTok. TikTok create this experience for you as a customer, which goes beyond personalization, and instead it is completely individual to you. You know, this is kind of like what we're striving to get to. And this is the bar that we're aiming for. Something which goes beyond, you know, just simply adding somebody's name into an email, for example, but instead is creating segments and really creating content and displays and views and product offerings which are unique to you as a customer. So that's the bar. Now, there's a few examples there's many examples of brands that I really like. To focus on one, there's this great company that I came across recently, which is called the Fish Society. Have you heard of them before?
No, I've not heard of the Fish Society.
Okay, so essentially the Fish Society is a place where you can buy your fish online. And one of the things that they do, which is great, is they try to take the experience that you would have when you go into a fishmonger's where you buy a salmon or a haddock, and then you say to the bloke behind the counter, how do I cook this? And off the back of that, you begin a conversation. And what the Fish Society do is they break out all of their communication depending on the type of product that you purchase. So let's say you purchase tuna online, then you'll get recipes and content specific to that item. They can also try and cross-sell you or upsell you, and all of these different strategies in place. So a really nice way of focusing on somebody that's made a purchase and just making sure that that experience is a little bit more, you know, enjoyable for them, that they've got some guidance, that they enjoy themselves. I think that's a great showcase of what you can do when you use customer data to personalize.
And that's a great example as well, because they're a reviews.io customer as well. So that's really nice. One of the kind of additional ways that it can work is around that kind of abandoned basket aspect. So if someone's been looking at kind of a whole salmon, but they haven't decided to kind of purchase, then we can kind of push reviews using the integration to them, showing what other customers have kind of felt about that kind of whole salmon and what they thought and what they enjoyed about it. And they're also kind of really kind of using the tool of reviews in the kind of best possible way, in the fact that they're kind of making sure that it kind of really fits around their brand. So they're utilizing all of those abilities to kind of adapt and show the best possible content at the right time to those customers.
I think there's something that's often overlooked, and I'm sure you've experienced this with some of your customers as well, is thinking that when you receive the review, that is the end of the customer journey. And I think oftentimes you can actually use the review or getting that review as the trigger point for more communication. So for example, when we think of like basic segmentation, if someone gives you a good review or a bad review, the way that you communicate with them after that should be fundamentally different. We want to make sure that if they have a good review, you thank them for that. Perhaps you promote a different product or, you know, a similar strategy. With a bad review, You want to reach out and say, okay, well, I'm so sorry about that. How can we make this right? How can we potentially rectify this experience? And then you can start building out a retention strategy from a scenario where otherwise you would have lost that customer potentially forever.
No, I think that's definitely true, because it's actually kind of like really kind of listening to what the customers are saying. So there's no point just sending a review to someone and getting that feedback back unless you're going to actually do something with it. So it's kind of really like, and that's why we've got integrations with Gorgias and other kind of help desks and Zendesk and various different things. And so that gives you the opportunity to say, if someone's given you a bad review, you can push that to those help desks. They can jump on it. They can have a conversation with that customer and kind of turn that around, because that's like, there's the 1-star review is 5 times more likely to be looked at than a 5-star review. So utilize that. Make sure that people feel like they're being listened to and connecting to.
Jack, how can brands begin their journey to create a more one-to-one experience for their customers?
So I'll approach this from a marketing automation perspective. I think it's really easy for brands nowadays to get a little bit overwhelmed when they see the complexities of marketing automation, how nuanced their email flow or SMS flow can be. So my recommendation is stick to the basics first and foremost. So there's a number of different flows that you can get set up really in minutes, which drive a huge amount of revenue. Actually, we think that the basic flows that brands implement oftentimes drive 30 to 50% of total revenue for a brand. So they're really, really significant. And some of these flows include a welcome flow. So when somebody signs up to email or SMS, you can start telling them about your brand, what identities you have, why they should care about you, what potentially resonates with them about your brand and your mission as a company. You can also look at post-purchase flows, so starting to engage with customers after the first transaction, and that's really important for building repeat customers who come back, and reviews is a massive component of that as well. So really nice to integrate those two experiences. And I think also another flow is browse abandonment or cart abandonment. So oftentimes people who perhaps aren't completely convinced that they want to make a purchase yet need a little bit of a kick in the right direction in terms of actually making that purchase. So really engaging with them, making sure that they understand why they are interested in the product. The other thing that I really want to stress is making sure that all of your technology is integrated. This is really important because when we think about how you market effectively, you want all your customer data in one place. And without integrations, if you don't have integrations set up between your review platform and Klaviyo, or your loyalty program and Klaviyo, or your e-commerce platform, it's really hard to fully understand the customer, because your data is segmented and isolated. When it's all in one place, you can then communicate to people really effectively. And it also means that you have a more holistic understanding of who they are and what they care about.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, like centralizing your data and keeping it all in one place, so you've got that decisioning. You can then set your decisioning based on all the different aspects and the data points that are kind of coming in. And that's hugely important. And it's like, from a kind of reviews point of view, and surveys, it's really listening to the customers. So what are your customers actually kind of talking about? And there's different ways that you can do that. There's kind of attributes as well, which are kind of questions from the brand. So what you can set the questions, because I think sometimes with reviews, if you just ask for a blank piece of paper and someone to kind of give their opinion, it's you're not quite sure what you're going to get and how useful that's going to be for you as a business. But if you've got attributes, you can kind of set what those kind of questions are, like what was the color like, what was the fit like, what was the material like, how did it make you feel, those type of kind of questions that will actually help shape your business. So it's those type of things, utilizing surveys as well. So it's not just reviews from customers who have purchased from you, but actually customers that are just on the kind of website. So understanding that point. But to kind of Jack's point, just making sure all your data is centralized and set the decisioning based on that is so key.
Yeah, and making that experience as frictionless as possible for the
enjoyable for the customer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we haven't said the word yet, but zero-party data, obviously. I think if we take this information that you can gather in surveys or in reviews and then feed that back into how you market. For example, you find somebody that likes blue dresses. The way that you communicate to them should be fundamentally different to somebody who enjoys yellow blouses, for example. And that's just one case, but there's many more. The more information we have and that you store, the more effective your marketing becomes.
So some of the big brands out there are doing it really, really well in terms of that personalized experience. We have the likes of Netflix, where they'll create your watch list based on other shows that you've watched. You've got Spotify creating your music playlist based on music they think you might like to listen to. They do it in a really non-invasive way. We've all been in that position where we've been attacked by advertising through social channels, perhaps predominantly. How do we ensure that we are not taking an invasive approach with our consumers?
This is near and dear to my heart. My wife went on a Kenyan safari about 9 months ago now, and every single time I log into YouTube, I'm reminded of the fact that she went and I didn't. So there's definitely a right way of doing it and a wrong way of doing it. I think that thinking about the metaphor of physical store really helps. You could be the sort of shopkeeper that follows a customer around the store until they make a purchase. They're probably not going to enjoy the experience. So I think trying to stay away from that is really, really positive for brands. As a brand, when you are using a marketing tool, you will be surprised at the amount of data that you gather about your customers. And I think there is a degree of ethics and common sense in terms of how you use it, how much you communicate to customers, and how you make sure that the offering that you are giving them remains relevant. At the end of the day, I think that a major mistake that brands make is viewing customers as purely one-time transactional events, essentially. They're far more than that, or should be far more than that. So the more that you can lean into this ongoing customer journey versus seeing something as a quick win, I think is probably the right way to approach it.
Yeah, I think so. And it is, as Jack says, like kind of it's utilizing the data as well. So the data and the responses from customers, like what's their feedback, what are they thinking? Bringing all that data together to help you kind of make a decision of like how are you reaching out to them, and like things like kind of loyalty platforms and reviews where you're creating a community, like utilize that community and learn from them, and kind of push kind of questions to them about the way that they want to be kind of contacted and when and where, because that's really where if you get your kind of decisioning based on that and just making sure that it's not kind of one size fits all. And it's I think previously when it was the kind of more old-fashioned kind of single customer view, where it was just this is the decision that's happening, and on Tuesday, if they looked at something on Tuesday, you're going to continuously send them the messages like the kind of Kenyan holiday. Like that's just the wrong way to do it, and it's about kind of understanding what in the moment to them is the most important thing. So I don't know, if it's a lunchtime, push them a lunch message. If it's dinner time, push them a dinner message. That kind of simplicity of it. Really, I think that's really important.
I think loyalty's interesting because when you think about loyalty, there's this opt-in component almost, and I think allowing customers to choose how they engage with your brand is important. So Klaviyo, we do email, SMS, mobile push. Really, we allow you to send messages through whatever channel you would like to.
And I think that's really important in the fact that like sometimes it might be an SMS message that's good for them, or an email, and it's adapting to that. Yeah. So it's not just the same way of or same channel. You've got to mix it up, and you've got to think what's relevant to those people at that different kind of points of their journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, we talk about loyalty, which hand in hand with brand advocacy, and getting this personalised approach right is key to that, ensuring that you are giving your customers that personalised experience to then ensure that they keep coming back to you, because you're making that journey as easy as possible for them, and presenting them the things that they want to buy, the things that they want to keep coming back to you for.
Because it's got to be an enjoyable experience for the customer. They've got to like it. So, even I think there's some nice stuff that's even done by post now. And it's a special thing. You've got something nice through the post. So, just thinking about all the different kind of channels that you can use.
Okay, guys, so to round this off, what do we think that the future holds for brands and personalisation?
I'll go ahead and say it. Artificial intelligence, perhaps? It was inevitable, wasn't it? I think there's a number of different ways where AI can really help marketers. The first one is making everyone's lives more efficient. So, for example, we now at Klaviyo have generative AI, which is created to help you create content, but equally help you create real marketing campaigns, which means that you as a brand don't need to spend as much time thinking about the mechanics of marketing. Instead, you think about the brand messaging and what people really care about. And I think the other area which we are seeing more and more brands utilize is predictive AI or predictive analytics. And what this does essentially is, rather than using past behavior to market to somebody, so what they have done previously, we can now predict what's going to happen next. So, for example, if you say, well, I have a relatively high confidence that this person is going to purchase a product in the next 60 days, perhaps you send them an email 30 days before just to engage with them, remind you that they're there. So I think this is a big push. And I think that with that, personalization really enhances in scope.
Yeah, I think like AI is obviously kind of a massively important thing. But what I would always be concerned about is that it is a time-saving tool, and that's great, but it should never undermine the kind of resources that you've got internally to really kind of look at kind of strategy. Because if you bring in any type of tech into your kind of business, you need to have the strategy around it, and you need people understanding how to get the most out of that tool, making sure that those integrations are set up so the AI can function as well as it can do. And that's a bit of a concern, because you just want to make sure that people are really, like, they're talking to their agency, they're talking to their kind of tech partners, they're talking to everyone to really kind of make sure that they understand and they're setting that strategy in the right way. And to the kind of point earlier, that you're centralizing all that kind of data, and that you're utilizing those channels in the right way.
I think it's not a silver bullet. I think that if you are doing bad marketing, it remains bad marketing, even if AI is there. Simultaneously, if you're doing good marketing and not using AI, it's still going to be effective. You still want to utilize your resources and really come up with a cohesive brand identity. Yeah. And you can use AI to enhance that, perhaps. It doesn't replace marketing or a marketing strategy.
Yeah. And I think it's just, there's lots of people that will willingly, support you from those kind of agencies or those kind of tech partners. So just use them, use that skills and that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that human sense check when it comes to AI is going to be critical. When we go back to that, previous conversation around not being too invasive, I think that's the risk that we run by allowing ourselves to depend too highly on AI, I think. I really appreciate the time you guys have spent with us. Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode.
Lovely to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks.